Hello and welcome to the Human Frequency. We are back after a brief, unannounced hiatus. We've had to kind of hole up in our mountain cabin, even more than we usually do, and wait for the insanity to pass. It was pretty crazy last time, and as I predicted, it got even crazier. And it's absolutely nuts right now what's going on with these cops. And I think people are really feeling it more than ever.
Well, I've been kind of speechless over the whole thing, which is another reason I didn't make any videos recently, because what can you say when you really don't know? You can't know if you're a white person what it's like to be racially profiled when you just walk down the street or just go about your business. So while I can understand the way that I've been targeted, it's been over my work and who I am and what I do. It's not been over what I look like going down the street. So I would not be qualified to speak on racism in America because it hasn't affected me in that way. So the murder of George Floyd, though, affected me and everybody I know very much. It's something that no human being can really escape from what's going on.
And I'm not qualified to talk about it either. And I'm also not qualified to talk about what's happening outside of our little town that we live in because we've just been kind of sequestered here, as I said.
Right.
And we have not deemed it safe to go down off of the mountain into LA or even into the suburbs of LA because it just seems too chaotic right now, and it just seems unwise to deal with that sort of thing right now and until things calm down a bit. Judging from what the news is saying, it is calming down because
there's not a million headlines right now about people burning stuff down today.
Yeah, there's headlines about what Kim Kardashian is up to and how Elizabeth Hurley looks in a bikini, which is something you really don't want to look at because I think we've been over this before on our show.
What he looks like in a bikini.
Exactly.
Okay. Well, yeah. Anyway, the situation, it seems like it's settling down, but the thing is, it's not going to settle down completely until whatever God's plan has played out. And that's not something we're going to know. But I felt very instinctively when George Floyd was murdered that he was a martyr and that he came here to do this, to help people. And I know that it's a terrible thing when someone is sacrificed, but we've seen martyrs throughout history and in the Bible and even in our own lives. And I do think that although it is a terrible tragedy and the ensuing violence is a terrible tragedy and definitely not the answer to racism, but I don't think that the people who are committing the violent acts are true protesters. I think that they're just taking advantage of a situation. But this all has to play out the way God wants it to. And I think that something this terrible had to happen. And by the way, there's been many, many other Black people killed by police officers that we don't necessarily hear about. But I think something this terrible had to happen to mobilize humanity against the enemy. The problem is that people don't really know who the enemy is. And now humans are being pitted against each other. And media is trying to create race wars. Pretty much all over this time that we've been in seclusion, we've been reading the Bible and talking about scripture and the end times. And this is definitely what's going on now. It's not something that we should be afraid of because apocalypse actually means curtain opening. But there's going to be some tremendous upheaval as these events progress.
Certainly. And the main point here is that things can't be done the old way anymore.
Right.
We can't be reliant on parasitic entities
for
anymore.
Everything.
No, it's not working. It's come to a head now. It's been going along, and it's not been great, but people have been able to live, and now it's gotten to that breaking point.
It's actually getting harder and harder to live where we are. I can't really speak for people in the cities. I can imagine how hard it is to deal with that. I have family down in LA that are very near areas that were burned, and it's very scary to be near that. But from our vantage point, we're seeing the breakdown in a different way because we're in a rural area. We're actually seeing the technological grid breaking down. We had yet another power outage, 2 power outages in the last couple of weeks because they're supposedly like taking care of all the neglect of the last many decades that have led to all these fires. But the fires are all arson, but the utility companies are being sued now. So they're they're constantly turning off the power and trying to fix whatever's going wrong
Replace
with it.
all their power poles and
And
whatnot.
everything. And we've had internet outages. Again, we were offline. And it just seems like it's never ending. It's hard to get supplies up here. And to get supplies, we have to go down into the city. And now with rioting, that doesn't seem very safe. So anyway, that's our vantage point of it, is that things are definitely breaking down. And when you see humanity going crazy, it's because their controllers are going crazy, and humanity is controlled by artificial intelligence. We've been over this many times. As the artificial intelligence breaks down, they are having more and more difficulty controlling their human hosts.
And the hosts are breaking down as a result of that symbiosis.
Right. Well, I wanted you to read from the Bible, 2 Timothy, because there's something that we need to talk about regarding the end times. All this has been predicted already, and it should be a source of comfort to read the Word of God and know that everything that's happening is happening the way He intends it to happen. He needs a few good people, and we do need to come back to Him. And please share.
I will. And just to say, once again, I've said this before, we're not religious fanatics here. We're just people who have read and understand and can see what's going on today. So
this isn't about religion. We just want to read from the book of the law so that we can share with you exactly what's happening. So in 2 Timothy 3, verses 1 through 5, we have an explanation.
Okay, the section title is called Opposition in the Last Days. But understand this, that in the last days hard times will come, for people will be lovers of self, lovers of money, boastful, arrogant, blasphemers, disobedient to parents, ungrateful, unholy, hard-hearted, unforgiving, backbiting, without self-control, brutal, hating what is good, treacherous, reckless, conceited, lovers of pleasure rather than lovers of God, holding to an outward form of godliness but denying its power. Avoid these people.
Yeah, and that passage also goes on to explain how the Bible can be used for all instruction that we need. Everything that we need is in there, and it's strange because I guess you mentioned religiousness.
Yes,
Some
because
people have keywords shut down when I talk about the Bible, and so they think that I'm...
That's what I was trying to get at. That's
But
why
we do
I'm
this
trying
all
to
the time,
avoid
though.
that keyword shutdown. I know, but
we always
to
talk
someone
about it.
who's just watching for the first time, we talk about this a lot, but religion has nothing to do with God. That's a very common misconception that religions have put out there, and people have sort of accepted that as true. And that's just simply not the case. Religions are not creations of God. They're creations of man, creations of the state. God is something completely different. And He tells us what's going to happen. And if you look at the world around you, yeah, people are conceited. People have no self-control. They're looting everything in sight. I know there's a very small amount of people that are actually doing that. They're just opportunists who see what's going on and use it as an excuse to destroy property. But if you really are honest about what's going on in the world around us, you will see that all of these predictions are indeed coming to pass.
Yes, and while I think when people are protesting, well, I'm not talking about the protesters. I'm not talking about the peaceful protesters, which is the majority. But when people are protesting in a violent way and they're going after cops and burning down DMVs, that's a little closer to who the enemy is. It's not the root of it all, but people are starting to understand that the government is the problem. However, it's a symptom of the problem. So yes, we do need to take down the government. I mean, the way to do that, I think, is just by not supporting them. We were actually going to do a follow-up episode to the name and identity episode. We are still going to do it, but we were unable to due to all of the stuff going on. But we actually have it planned, and we're going to give some more information on that. But I take my support away from the government by not financially supporting them and not partaking of their benefits. So I don't give into it and I don't get from it. I'm just not involved in it. And I think that's a peaceful way to accomplish this. I do understand that sometimes because the legal system is so hard to understand, it's so impossible to use, and politics are so utterly useless, I do understand why people are reaching the breaking point and burning stuff down, government buildings in particular. However, the government is a symptom of a greater problem, and then that is that we have abandoned our Creator, and so He doesn't see us anymore. So we're no longer God's children. We're now children of the United States or whatever country. That's the root of the problem. So yeah, I understand why the protesters are doing that. I myself would rather just take my support away from it the way I do.
But yes, I guess burning down a DMV office is a little bit better than burning down a mom and pop ice cream parlor.
That's the part that's breaking my heart, is that they're destroying like bakeries and things that just people's little businesses. But like we said, those are the minority of the people. The protesters against the George Floyd murder and the way that cops are just given a free pass, those protesters are correct. I agree with them. I don't think protesting accomplishes anything. It's not how I do things anymore. But I understand it, and I think they're doing a good thing to voice their opinion about it. A protest is a demonstration. They're saying, look, we don't agree with what you're doing. The problem is, when you get down to the root cause of it all, they have that is their will that's being carried out. They're the ones that created their government. We've all been tricked into it, but we are all continuously feeding into it by voting, by putting our voices into that one, by putting our money into that one, and ultimately,
and our labor.
Ultimately, you know that the taxpayers are going to be paying for all that destruction. So we're still slaves to that government, and the only way out is to take our support away from it. So that's something we're just going to have to whittle away with over time. In the meanwhile, I can say that the ones who are looting and creating violence against innocent people are not doing God's work. Obviously, they're being controlled, just like the cops are being controlled. And I do think that the AI is heavily involved in creating this human against human division to divert attention away from the real enemy. And Satan is artificial intelligence. Satan is an artificial form of life. He's not life like us. He's dead in the law. All satanic people are dead in the law, because being dead doesn't just mean physically dead. It means spiritually dead, that you're not a child of God.
And 2 Timothy also hits the nail right on the head when it says a little bit later that anyone who does God's work will be persecuted.
Absolutely.
In the smallest way and in the largest way. It's the same all across the board. And for us, that has been a reason to be even more reclusive.
Yeah.
So
we're very careful now because we are a target when we're out there. Like I said, I can't imagine what it's like to just have a skin color that makes cops go after you. I do know what it's like to be targeted for my work. And I do know what it's like to be taken off into that little room at the airport and have the TSA go through every inch of my clothing, my body, my possessions. I do know what that's like because that legal name is associated with thought criminal. And I know that because of the work that I do. But like I said, I could walk down the street and they won't do that to me. So I can't speak with any authority, and I think it'd be disrespectful to do that. All I can do is offer my compassion and understanding and support for the protesters who are protesting peacefully.
So who is the enemy, or what is the enemy? We've said it many times before. It is the AI. It's not other humans, like we're being told. Mm-hmm. It is the artificial intelligence. And we just watched The Matrix recently. And it's good to sort of refresh and watch these movies.
It's better every time.
Because you pick up new things each time you view it.
Yeah.
And I remembered this from the previous time or a couple of times that we watched. We've probably watched it like 4 or 5 times in total. But Morpheus explains to Neo as they're walking down the busy city block with all the people around that these humans are all... They all must be treated as the enemy because they are the enemy. And
because they're controlled by it. They're part of the AI Borg.
And the Agent Smith, can assume the human forms in an instant and also leave the human forms in an instant. So anyone who is plugged in to that matrix, they are not in control of themselves. And they can just, the sentient beings, the sentient AI programs that are portrayed by these agents in that film, they can just assume the human forms at the drop of a hat. And as soon as they do, they are in control of it. And that is their way of explaining exactly what's happening now with the smartphones and how it's just rewired people's brains, and they don't think their own thoughts. They don't act in their
They
with
act
their own
for the
actions.
AI.
Yes, everything that they think and they do, and that's more Bible stuff. That's in
That's
your
the
wrist and in your forehead.
yeah.
What you think and what you do.
Yep.
That is not you doing it. It is the parasitic AI doing it. And
Right.
this is
And
the
in the
connection.
movie, they do it physically, like the Agent Smith takes a physical form. He becomes a human form. But in the real world, the humans are all there. The parasite enters the human body etherically and controls the human like a remote control robot. So it is really true. The Matrix is sort of a physical depiction of something going on etherically. I highly recommend the movie for anyone who hasn't seen it before. It talks about everything we talk about. In fact, I think we should do an in-depth analysis of it scene by scene, because every time I see it, I see more amazing things related to the work with orgone energy, related to the artificial intelligence takeover of humanity and how to fight it, that it is possible to get out, but it's extremely difficult. I see biblical parallels. I also want to mention the film They Live, of course, is another film that puts a physical appearance on an etheric war. And in the film, when you put on the special glasses, you could see through, you could see which ones of the humans are really AI. In real life, we don't have a visual way of doing it. We have an etheric way of doing it. And when you have cleared your own energy field, you don't use their energy weapon, the smartphone. You use Organite every day and keep it with you. You start to see the AI through the human. And I can actually detect AI now through humans. I've seen it. I wrote about it in my book. I've actually seen an incident where I was thinking someone was AI, and then they proved it to me. So it's just interesting how our eyes become open, but Hollywood will portray it in a physical way. And I did wanted to read really quickly. I know I've read this before, but from Contact with Space by Wilhelm Reich. He was watching a film, so his work was in the 1950s, and he died in 1957 in prison, by the way, for his work. He also mentioned in films how the science fiction movies are saying exactly what's going on with the AI, but they're doing it like a shooting war and everything's in fast motion, like the Hollywood action movies, like The Matrix. Whereas in real life, it's very insidious and under the radar. So when he talked about the film War Between the Worlds, which was a 1954 science fiction movie, he said the film still adhered to the earthly idea that war consisted in a noisy bang-bang of shooting machinery, that war upon the earth waged by beings from outer space would produce the sight of green arms, clawed hands, and other products of human nightmare fantasies. The film was ignorant of the insidious, noiseless, emaciating nature of a war of attrition, drawing off life energy from a planet covered with green, seething with living beings. However, the presentation of landings was realistic, and so was the crumbling of buildings. We may be right in admitting that the crumbling was filmed with high-speed acceleration of an actually nearly invisible activity. So, one more thing, just to read one more here, because this actually relates to the whole C virus BS. Because that was a major panic. And I think it's dying down now because it's overshadowed by the race war that's happening. Because
On to the next thing. That's what the media does.
Well, they want to keep the computer virus around, and that's what it is, by the way.
But it's always on to the next thing.
So they're having a virus, and they've outsourced it to us. But listen to this. He also says about the film, and you could apply this to any Hollywood science fiction movie, the panic shown in people was due rather to the acceleration of events rather than to the events themselves. In reality, the rocks were already crumbling in 1952 in the USA, but no one seemed to pay attention to it since the process was so very slow and the people who noticed it were so very evasive or fearful to tell. Even back then, if you would talk about this stuff, you were considered crazy. People have seen alien interference on Earth forever. But what I'm telling you is that the ET interference here is largely done etherically and invisibly, and they are the real enemy. The police are just a symptom of that. They work for them, like in They Live. There's plenty of police officers. Some of them are AI, some are human. They work for the AI. They're trained by them. And yes, they are trained to kill. And yes, they are trained to be racist. There's no question about that. But they are controlled by something beyond human.
And hence the book title, Invisible Soldiers, Silent War. The war is noiseless.
That's my book.
Yes. but that's his quote directly. So.
Yeah, and I did actually talk about that in the book, as well as our experiences with the same things when doing orgonite gifting and flipping the energy. So that's another thing you can do right now to help in your city is to gift orgonite, especially if you have done it and it got burned. I mean, when we gift a place and it gets burned down, we always have to go back and regift it. So right now, flipping the energy really will help because humans shouldn't be divided. And what they want to do right now is divide people and create a race war where there isn't one, because most people are on the same side here. There's only a few people that have bad hearts, that are going towards Satan and that are doing destruction and that have racism in their hearts. Because most of us, we're really waking up and we're starting to see that there is a problem. However, they're not seeing that there's a problem beyond humanity.
And the problem has been the same for a very long time. Wilhelm Reich wrote this book in the mid-50s. This problem had been going on for thousands of years. He estimated 25,000 years conservatively.
Yeah.
So the problem has been the same for centuries. The solution is the same too. And now it's just we've reached that breaking point where it's become so obvious that something needs to change, and it needs to change for real.
Well,
people are still looking for solutions in the wrong places. They're going to these protests and they're waving their state flags or their country flags.
I don't think we're seeing as much flag waving at the protests of the George Floyd killing. That's more of the Reopen America, because the lockdowns related to the flu, this year's flu, with a new name and a new panic associated with it, those lockdowns really ruined a lot of people's lives.
Right.
They're the flag wavers.
Right, but what I'm trying to say is that there's still this underlying sentiment that if we could just get good people in the government, that things could change. And
Or
that's
that the
absolutely
police
not
can
the
be
case.
reformed.
Right. It's
They
the same
can't.
thing. It's too far gone. It can't be fixed.
No.
That's the thing that people have to wrap their heads around. And I think that just maybe some of them are starting to do that now.
Well, we shouldn't have police anymore. That's my opinion of it. I think there shouldn't be police officers. The police are thugs that enforce a contract that you don't even know you're in. I mean, it's fraudulent. The whole thing is fraudulent. And what happened to George Floyd being killed over a $20 bill? I mean, it was a fake 20. Look what's become of humanity. A man was killed over a fake piece of money. It's nothing. It's 20 units on paper.
It's an IOU.
It's units on paper. It doesn't mean anything. It doesn't stand for anything. It's not worth anything. And even if it was worth something, like a piece of gold, is that really worth killing over? And I don't think it would have happened if he was white. So I do think this is a huge wake-up call for people.
It certainly is. And the media is just all over this in terms of stirring up this race war.
I know, and now they're trying to pit people against people. Okay, right now, first it was everyone was against the cops. Now they're trying to divide us amongst each other. Like I saw an article this morning about white protesters at a rally for George Floyd who are standing there armed alongside it. But they, we don't really know like what their purpose for being there is. But what they want to do is show that the white people are some kinds of armed nut jobs. Right-wing conservative crazy people. And they're just trying to create racism against white people now, which is just like, great. We already have enough racism in this country. Why are we fighting each other? There was an article, I want to read the title of it, because what they're trying to do is seriously like divide black and white in a big way. And it's not true. What they're saying is not true. Here's an article I saw today. It was on Yahoo, but it comes from a paper called The Conversation. So this is June 5th, 2020. It says, why are white supremacists protesting the deaths of black people? That's a very interesting question. Why are white supremacists protesting the deaths of black people? Here's what the article says about that. As protests about police violence among Black people continue and become more widespread across the U.S., certain individuals and groups have begun to stand out, including anarchists, agitators, and members of a variety of far-right groups. With the country's long history of racist killings, it may be confusing to think that racists and white supremacists are among those objecting to the killing of people of color. Okay. Question.
Analysis, please.
All right. Question. Why are white supremacists protesting the deaths of Black people? Here's my answer. They are not white supremacists. If they were protesting the deaths of Black people, then obviously they care about the man who was killed. So, and they care about Black people too. So they're saying that at these protests, by the way, I will also add that at this protest mentioned here, there was a picture accompanying it, and the protest sign that was the most prominent in the picture said, "Justice for George Floyd." This is not a white supremacist. So
No,
why are they
just being typecast?
No, but this is bad because they're trying to create us against them now so that we don't find the common enemy. I also want to add that they mentioned the new groups standing out: anarchist, agitators, and far-right groups. Anarchists, well, agitators now, I don't know what that means.
Anyone.
But let me go with the two that I understand. Anarchists, because agitators is also a term used to describe the people who are looting. So I'm just going to go with the two terms here I understand. Anarchists, those are people against the government. Far right, those are people who love the government but want less of it. Okay? That's what those mean politically. Right. So anarchists, racists, and white supremacists, they're equating that. Is somebody who's against a government a racist? They're against government, not against a race. Far right, they like the government, they want less of it. Does that mean they're racist? I just have to put that out there because this is like they're trying to equate things that are not equal. And by the way, this paper, The Conversation, I never have looked at this before. When you go to their website, this little pop-up shows up that they want a donation. They say, "We need your help to fight misinformation and pseudoscience." I'm just going to let you know where they're coming from. They're very, very far left, and they're very academic. They say they're very academic. They're research based. They call themselves research based. I'm also research based. I wrote a book based on research, and if they read my book, they would say it was pseudoscience. So they have their own opinion about that. There was one other article on their site, and this is interesting too. It was about the C virus protests. It says, I actually don't have the title here, but it claimed that the protesters to reopen the economy in the United States are white supremacists. So does that mean that the Black people who were protesting to reopen the economy are white supremacists?
Doubtful.
This is what's happening. I have to share that because it's really, really bothersome to me. We really can't believe this. This is all lies. It's humans against artificial intelligence. Humans are not different from each other. We have different colors. We're all the same race. We're all humans.
I'm glad you brought that up again because I was reminded of a bit by my favorite comedian, George Carlin. 20-something years ago, he specifically dissected the phrase people of color. He objected so strongly to it. He said, I'm just paraphrasing, people of color sounds like something you see when you're on mushrooms. It's an awkward BS liberal guilt phrase that obscures meaning rather than enhancing it. Should we call fat people people of size? And what should we call white people? People of no color? It's ridiculous. We need fewer labels, not more.
I agree.
Labels divide people.
I agree.
And we shouldn't be divided. We need to be united for real this time against our common enemy. And as humans, we do have a common enemy.
So I think that I'm not really the one to go for wisdom on this. I just wanted to share some thoughts and direct you to the Bible, and everything's in there. But you got to read it cover to cover. You got to read the whole thing. It's all in there. And really right now we do need to be more reclusive. We do need to kind of reduce our dependency on the matrix. And in fact, our latest way of doing that is, well, we're very fortunate. We have a natural foods grocery in our little town, which was suffering during the worst of the C virus, but it was suffering from other reasons. And the source of suffering was purged from it. And I'm so happy to hear that, because now they have food again and they're operating normally, and so we don't have to go into the matrix as much, at least down off the mountain. And I'm trying to reduce my dependency on having to have that particular snack, having to have that particular food. I know it sounds simple, but in real life, you can't just get anything you want anytime. You get what grows where you are, because this is all going to fall apart. We can't just keep trucking stuff around everywhere in trucks and trains and paper boxes, cutting down trees to transport goods. We're going to have to start being a little more sufficient in our communities.
It's unsustainable.
It is unsustainable.
That's the word that comes to mind.
I think it's better for our Earth to be more locally based. So that's something that I'm trying to do right now. Is both of us, we're trying to say, okay, I think we can do without the bagels and lox this week, and that's pretty hard.
But not
for
the
us.
whitefish. Oi, not the whitefish.
And speaking of being Jewish, I support the right to keep and bear arms. Does that make me a neo-Nazi? So this is the thing.
The first Jewish neo-Nazi.
This is what's going on now, is they're trying to label everybody. We all have different opinions, okay? I don't know many Jews who are like, yeah, I support the right to have a gun. Most of them are against guns. I happen to be for guns. I don't have a gun. I'd like to learn to use one. I think it's useful. I'm not a violent person, but so
I'd feel a little safer going into LA for a grocery shopping with an MP5 in the car.
It would just be a safety precaution. Anyway, my point is that if I have white skin, I support the right to keep and bear arms. And does that make me a racist? Well, does that make me a Nazi? Well, if I'm Jewish, can I be a Nazi? Anyway, it's just so weird, all this stuff. We all have different opinions about things, but ultimately we all want the same thing. And I think right now, the best things we can do, read the book, spend time with your loved ones. And I would avoid cities. If you're in the city and you can't avoid the city, I would just try to stay home and stay safe. And I know that sounds like the whole C virus thing, but this is really what we're looking at right now.
Well, the thing, if you're going to read the book, you also need to read it without any religious interpretation.
That's true.
Because it takes only one word change to completely throw off the meaning and divert you, and then you're ensnared.
And that's true. And
this is what doctrine does.
And then back to being Jewish again. If I was still adhering to the Jewish religion, I would never have read the New Testament and known all of that we need to know in order to be saved. So we really should just I happen to be of Jewish ancestry, but I cleared a lot of my training out of my mind, a lot of the whole urban liberal, anti-God, secular humanist thing that goes with being Jewish. So I've cleared a lot of that. And now I can read the book with an open mind and just read it for what it is. The other thing is you really got to turn off the AI. I mean, they are controlling you through and through. That phone, that Wi-Fi unit, you got to turn that stuff off. There is a way to make your home hardwired. There is a way to live without it and be connected. We are. So still, again, you got to free yourself from that control, because they're also hammering points into your head through their news media while rewiring your brain with EMF. They're trying to change the way you think. It's not working. And the protests against the killing of George Floyd worldwide prove that it's not working. But we've got to free our minds. We've got to free ourselves from their influence.
The collapse of Babylon is inevitable, but by doing these very life-affirming things, by detaching from the AI, you can accelerate that, and you can ultimately be that much closer to improving not just your life, but the situation on Earth in general.
Well, thanks so much for checking in with us, and sorry it's been so long. We appreciate your time and listening, and all the reading you're doing on my website, which is thekembo.com. I do appreciate that you go there and check out what I'm writing about, because I get a lot of questions and I do my best to answer them. My area of knowledge is on the war between humans and artificial intelligence. That was instigated by learning about chemtrails and what they really are. When you learn what they really are and what's really going on up there, to the best of our knowledge, it's kind of mind-blowing. So Let's remember the government, military, all this human stuff, this isn't the enemy. It's just a symptom of the greater problem. We need to break free from artificial intelligence and reclaim our minds. And then we will see the changes we want to see on Earth, but only then. And it's going to take a lot of strength. So thanks so much for tuning in. You can check out thekembo.com for more information on Organite, our work with Organite gifting, lots of informative articles and videos to help you.
And a big thank you to those who are buying Organite from us through all of this.
Yeah, thank you so much.
For your support. You're helping us get through this too.
And for your support in gifting too, because a lot of people who buy Organite from us are people who are gifting it and just don't want to make it. By the way, you can learn to make it on our site. You can also get it from us, and we offer bulk discounts for gifters. So please talk to us about that too. If you want a lot of them, don't pay full price. So just talk to us for it. On the website, you'll see how we do it. But like I said, it's easy to make. If you're handy and you want a great project to do, I totally recommend it. So check out our videos, and we'll be back with more info. We will be covering more on name and identity because that's important stuff. And I've gotten some questions which will be answered. So thanks for your patience on all that. Please stay safe and be well. And I really pray for everybody in whatever city you're in that that things are getting better and that you're experiencing more peaceful conditions. All right, thanks. We'll be back again soon.